The Kreg precision beaded phase frame system begins with the 28-inch long by 3.5-inch tall aluminum fence. The fence has 3 T-shaped channels, 1 on the top and 2 in the face. The factory installed scale along the top of the fence has both metric and standard markings. This jig attaches to a router table using a standard T-slot and is secured with these finger-operated knobs. Kreg gives you the option of mounting the operating handle directly on the slide and operating the jig that way. But they also give you this bar that moves the handle out quite a ways, gives you a lot of leverage. I think the jig is a lot easier to work this way, so that's how I set mine up. Kreg also includes this very nice flip stop. We position this flip stop along the scale on top of the fence to control the placement and width of the cuts that we make. This material clamp is included with the kit and makes securing the stock to the fence very easy. The kit also includes the 1/2-inch diameter setup dowel, the notching bit, and the beading bit. Kreg also includes one of the very trick setup bars that's used for setting the bit height and then for checking the depth of the cut. Setting up the Kreg precision beaded face frame system entails aligning the fence with the edge of the base. When satisfied with that alignment, we just tighten up the 4 bolts using the included Allen wrench. Next, we install the 1/2-inch diameter setup dowel in the router and set the flip stop at 1/4 inch. Then we carefully slide the entire fence assembly over until the flip stop just touches the setup dowel. Then we tighten the 2 finger knobs on the base and the jig is locked in place and ready for use. As with any form of joinery, you have to start with accurately dimensioned and sized wood if you expect the Kreg precision beaded face frame system to perform at its best. I installed the notching bit and adjusted its height so the top of the carbide cutter just touches the Kreg setup bar. Next I'll make a test cut in some scrap wood and then use the other side of the Kreg setup bar to be sure that all 3 surfaces are in contact with the wood. That means that the cut depth is exactly right. I've already dimensioned all of the parts for this face frame according to example 1 in the Kreg instruction manual, and I'll use the flip stop settings listed in the manual for that example. First we set the flip stop to 0 so you can make the initial cut on both ends of the stiles. Here I'm taping the stile pieces together so the notches will be cut exactly the same in both of them. The stiles are situated so that the faces that will show in the final project are pressed together in the center. This virtually eliminates any tear out on the edges that will show when the project is finished. Now I can put the stile pieces against the flip stop, clamp them in place, start the router, and make the initial cut on both ends. Next we adjust the flip stop to the 3/4 inch to complete the end cut on both ends of the stiles. Then we can make the final pass on both ends of the stiles to complete those notches. Now I reset the flip stop to 7¼ inches to make the notch for the drawer divider. And then with the stiles clamped in place, we can make one pass and that creates the notch for the drawer divider. Now we move the flip stop to 1/2 inch on the left side of the bit for cutting the notches in the rails. It's important to remember that the top and bottom rails are notched on one edge, but the drawer rail is notched on both edges. I cheated and marked all the corners that had to be notched when I dry fit the assembly. If you don't pay attention or mark the pieces ahead of time, you could wind up with 2 rails that are notched for drawer dividers. From here on out, we just used a regular router table fence, so we loosened the 2 knobs and removed the Kreg precision beaded face frame system from the router table. It's that easy. Next I laid the parts out and made sure that everything fit cleanly. All of the joints fit very cleanly, so now we can move on to beading. The height of the beading bit is also set using the Kreg setup bar. I adjusted the fence halves so they're close to the bit, then used the straight edge to make sure that the faces are flush with the front edge of the bearing. Then I ran beads on some test pieces to confirm that bit's setup, and it turned out to be right on the money. Now I can go ahead and cut the beads on the edges of my project pieces. I just have to make sure that I cut the beads on the right edges. Here again I cheated a little bit and marked the edges to be beaded when I did the dry fit. After confirming the fit of the project pieces, it's time to move on to assembly. I used my Kreg jig to drill the pocket holes in the back of both ends of all the rails. Then I applied a little glue, clamped the pieces up, and installed the screws to finish the joints. I'll have to do a little bit of sanding before applying finish, but these beads are just about perfect as they come out of the jig.